And we're back for another speaker on this leadership series. Hi, I'm Elle Ingalls, and by now you're pretty familiar with the fact that I am the creator of the Pressure-Free Method. This is a series on leadership, and I have a wonderful guest to bring to you today. Her name is Lindsay Davis, and welcome, Lindsay.
Thanks very much, Elle. Thanks so much. I really appreciate being here.
Yeah, so can you share with us a little bit about you? And then I know you have some great content to share with us today.
Absolutely. Well, in my content, we'll go into a little bit more about my story, but just to give you a bit of background on me, I am originally from South Africa. I immigrated to the US many years ago, and then in my 20s decided I needed to go home and do all those fun things. So ran back to South Africa where I met my lovely husband. And 3.5 years ago, we made the move back to Colorado. So I've been here. I've been a certified coach for the last decade, um, focusing on leadership, productivity, and entrepreneurship. And yeah, just thrilled to be part of today. So thank you very much.
Oh, it's wonderful. I have a lot of friends in Colorado, so this is great to have another connection there. So yeah, dive in, Lindsay.
Sure. Well, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and get this started. And as we get going, let me just talk about it. And I hope that the language in this doesn't offend anybody. So I'm just going to ask for forgiveness, not permission, as we get going.
I love it.
So that would be mine, but I'll keep it down to a minimum. But really today, what today is about is the art of getting the right shit done. As opposed to just getting shit done, because we're all getting shit done, but how much of it is the right and how much of it is what we should actually be doing. And to just dive into a little bit of my background and how I got to this point, and I got sort of interested and involved in productivity for many years. I headed up some pretty big companies in their sales director roles, some global luxury brands that everybody would know if I told you the names of them. And I wound up sort of burning out a few times, and every time it was somebody else's fault. Every time they were pushing me, they, and not me. And after an epic burnout, I wound up taking a complete career change and shifted my life into coaching and became a certified coach. And through that coaching journey, I was with an organization, a for-profit accelerator in South Africa, and I had just had my baby. I'd literally come back from maternity leave. I thought while I was on maternity leave, I was going to study strategic risk management with the University of Cape Town. So I've got a little baby, I'm studying. The CEO walks in and offers me not one of my dream jobs, but both of them. So I took them. I was like, yes, I can do this. I can be the divisional head of your coaching academy. I can be the divisional head of the learning academy. This is me. I'm killing it. I'm crushing it. I'm awesome. Life is great. I've got it all. And I did. And I was flying high, and it was perfect and it was wonderful. And then once the sort of dust settled a little bit, it started being a bit of work, and a little bit more and a little bit more. And then I would be leaving the house at 6:45 in the morning, and I'd be getting home at 6 o'clock at night. And I'd have my laptop with me, and we'd eat dinner and then put my child to bed, and then I'd go back to work, and it was just getting too much. And then my daughter, her name's Ava, she started to call me dad. And then she started to call me Mazus. So her nanny, who took care of her while I was busy living my dream life, or so I thought, her name was Mavis. And that's who my child identified as the person in her world.
Right.
And I mean, I even have my little tissue here just in case, because it still hurts all these years later. But I sat there one night and I was just in tears, and I suddenly realized that I couldn't do it anymore. I couldn't be all of this at the same time anymore. And when I looked at what could go away or what had to give, there was only one space that I could even consider walking away from or cutting back on or any of those things. And so the next morning, with nothing prepared and tears in my eyes, I wound up walking into the CEO's office and just saying to him, I don't want to, but I'm resigning. Not from one, but from both departments. I'm done. I can't do this. And I cried. It hurt to my core. And he just looked at me and he just said, no. What? He said, no, I can't lose you in this organization, and I'm not willing to lose you. So he's like, sit down. And I'd had a hysterical cry, ugly cry, the whole lot. But he said, and this was a pivotal moment for me, because he suddenly said to me, what do you need? And I looked at him and he's like, what do you want? What do you need? How do we make this work for you? And for me, that's not something that somebody'd asked me. And that's not something I'd allowed myself to think. It was like, this is happening, this is happening, this is happening, this is happening, and more. And it really got me to the point where I suddenly had to, like, holy shit, okay, hang on, I am a human here. I do count. I'm not just the doer and the giver and the thing. There's a me in here, and that me is lost. So I walked out of his office that day, still employed, which was great. I left the office at 2:30, and that was our agreement. I took a minor pay cut for a major amount of hours given back to me. He was very gracious. By the end of the day, had an assistant hired to take stuff off my plate. And there were just so many simple solutions that came into place where I had felt so trapped that morning. And so from there, I really started to work on, like, okay, what is this art of getting the right shit done? Where's this piece? Because there were so many fixes in there. And so that's going to lead me into what we're going to look at today. And the basic principles of the art of getting the right shit done are these. What are your priorities? How do you hold your boundaries? And what actions can you take? And so with those three things in place, that's where you can start to get traction. And that's where you can start to get the control again, whether you're a leader or just an everyday human or an entrepreneur or whatever you may be, these principles remain the same. But before we can go into any of those, what we have to do is stop. And it's that pivotal moment of, what do you need? And it's not to say you have to hit breaking point. I hope for anybody listening to this that you get here before you get to that point. But to look at it and be like, what is actually going on? What is happening? What is the real reason? Why am I so busy? And I hate the word busy these days because it's sort of, I view it the same as the word fine. How are you? Oh, I'm busy. Oh, I'm so busy. Oh, work is so busy. Life is so busy. I run around with the kids. I'm so busy. But what are you actually doing? Busy with what? Busy does not equal success. Busy does not equal productive. Busy to me is a counter of productive. Busy is poor time management. Busy is the fact that you've forgotten how to, or you've never learned to say no or to put yourself first. So before we can get into all of these other things, is to stop and to look at the reality and say, am I busy? Am I really busy? Is there anybody else? Am I the only one who can clean the toilet? Does the toilet really care who cleans it? Nope. Could it go an extra day because this is a bigger thing? And I'm not saying people have to live in filth or any of those things, but just understanding like how much stuff we can fill our time with that isn't really real or relevant in our world. So step one for me is really just taking that pause, having that moment, whether you're in tears in somebody's office or somebody's in your office, if you're a leader and you're running these organizations, and be like, what's the real truth here? And figure that out.
Yeah. Can I come in on that busy for a moment? Because that's really powerful. One of the things that I've noticed in my practice is I stopped ever using that word once I cleaned up my stress hormone release. So when we're stressed, everything feels busy, even if we're not even hardly doing anything. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I love that you're bringing this forward. It's great.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, we'll talk about that when we talk into the action part of things, but like from figuring out like, am I busy or why am I busy is the biggest one. Why am I busy? Is it, and I've had it come out with many of my clients, some of it is self-worth.
Yes.
People will only like me or view me as worthy if I am busy, if I am running around all day, every day. Some of it is like myself, my issue, why was I so busy? Why was it so hard? Is that I at no point had stopped to go, what do I want? What do I need? Everything that came at me, I was like, yes, because this is going to make my life perfect. It was a perfect little shit show there, but yeah, that's what it was. So once I was able to, and once you are able to get to this point where you're like, great, so we've got the problem statement here, and the problem statement starts with I, because no one else is making you busy, and it's that ownership piece. We can then move into the solutions part of it. And the first part of the solutions is to ask this, and I know we have access to a handout and things as well that'll help with this, but the first question is like, what is really important to me? What are my priorities? And I'll give you some examples that have come out in my life. And I mean, any parent, I'm quite sure your kids will be on that list.
Mhm.
But for me, to be able to have my child not call me dad was a priority. To be there more than get out of bed and put her back into bed. That was a huge priority. When we left South Africa and moved to Colorado, my child went through some separation anxiety and some stress and trauma, as most people do. But when it came to school, we promised her that she would not have to ride the bus. So if you go into my calendar 2:30 every day, from 2:30 to 3:30, my diary says collect Ava. And we'll talk about how that fits into the boundary setting. But what are your priorities? Where are they? And create the list. It doesn't matter if a priority for you is eating cereal every morning, write it down, make a note of it. Because, and you and I have chatted about this and we'll speak about it again, but if you're not doing the things that are important to you, you're going to start resenting everything else you have to do. Because not every day is easy. Not every day is a great sort of gung-ho, happy day and it's all perfect. So what I recommend you do is list your priorities. And if you, as a leader, if you're running an organization, like, you'll have the strategic priorities, yes. But maybe you have some priorities with your team. What are your personal priorities? How are you lowering your own stress rate? How are you showing up as a better human? For the coaches, like, how are we showing up as better coaches for our clients? We've got all of these pieces that fit in there. And then what I definitely urge people to do is to grab your calendar and your to-do list and compare the two. And this is where a lot of my clients get a huge shock. I had one client who, on her priority list, number one, like circled the whole thing, was spend time with mom because her mother was terminal. Mm-hmm. And when we opened her calendar, I said, well, where are you seeing your mom? And she broke. She just says to me, anytime I can. Priorities aren't anytime I can. Priorities and getting the right shit done is putting that in first and foremost. If that's the right stuff, so priorities are the right shit, those need to be there. Those need to be untouchable. Those need to exist first, and then the other stuff can come in. And we don't have to be, and we'll talk about this in boundaries, we don't have to be rigid, but they need to go in first. Mm-hmm. And if they're not, then that's where you're falling short. If you're trying to just slot them in, spending time with the kids, date nights, hitting the strategic goal, meeting with my teams, working out for myself, all of those things, they need to be in, because if they're not happening.
Right.
Huge problem that we face. And then to look at what I call GSD time, so get shit done time, and figuring out how best to plan that. So the get shit done is where you're sitting with your calendar, with your to-do list, and actually putting time aside to put time aside for things. So it's actually a strategic piece that you're going to take in.
That's so good.
Once you've got it done, so you've planned it, there's priorities, we know what's important, and we've planned it. How do we protect it? Because, and I remember my life from corporate and those sort of things, where a lot of my time was office bound. And I mean, I ran big teams, they'd be out on the road. And so I'd be in the office. So I wouldn't have things unless it would just be their meetings, and then I'd be doing my work. But somebody pops past, and now somebody views your calendar and, oh, your day looks wide open. I'm going to put this and this in. But I was supposed to be working on this proposal and this presentation in that time. I didn't do it. Oh, I'd wanted to go to stores, but I didn't list it because I didn't have to answer to levels up, except till it was the CEO. And their diary was always full. So I was the one looking for time in their calendar, not the other way around. So when we come to this and setting the boundaries, is like, how do we protect our priorities? And the one is put them in the calendar. Give them their own bucket, their own space. Put them on a wall, put them somewhere where you're constantly reminded. I said to you earlier, I have my daughter's name attached. I put people's names on things, which means that if somebody wants that time slot, I have to go delete her name and delete the action of my commitment to her, which is a nice little mental thing for you. Some of us would gladly delete, like month end, payroll, like, oh, tax, delete. But if you're battling with those things, put the Y next to it. put the why next to it. If you want to get healthy, I mean, you could either put in your diary, walk at 8 a.m. every morning, or I've got in my diary, because that's my habit that I've formed, 10,000 steps before 10 a.m. That's my habit. So my phone pings me at 8 a.m. and I'm up and I'm like, 10,000 steps. That's what I'm doing quickly now. And off I go. It just reminds me of what I should be doing. Other things with your boundaries is learning to say no easily and gracefully. I've got some questions that I work with my clients on. So if you are saying yes to this, what am I saying no to? And that's an absolutely fine question to ask somebody. If you're in a leadership role and you've got people in the team, like, yeah, if I say yes to this, here's my list of priorities. Which one do I say no to? Or here's the list of things you've asked from me. Which one can I take off if this is something you need there? So if I'm saying yes to this, what am I saying no to? And also understanding other ways to say a graceful no, that people feel considered. Because when we set boundaries, we don't have to do this like hard, fast, not happening kind of no to people. If you let people feel considered, they'll respect it a little bit more, and they'll be sort of a little bit more deliberate and specific in their asks when they come to you. Hi, I know you're working on this, but could you please? And you can say, look, thank you for thinking I could help you with this. Unfortunately, I'm in this position now. Have you tried so and so? Could we collaborate later? Can I set you up for success like this? So there's all different ways that we can do it. And then the other thing that I want people to understand about boundaries is like letting other people know what your boundaries are and why. Like, do people understand why your priority is your priority? Do people understand that there's no way you're getting my 2:30 slot? Why? Because I made a promise to my own child. So that's my deal. So if you want me to break that promise, fine, but now you know why it's there. And so letting people do that and asking people if you battle to hold you accountable. A lot of us have coaches. I'm a coach. I have a coach. Elle, I know you have a coach because we were chatting about that.
Yes.
But my coach knows, like, this is where I'm slipping on this. This is what I battle with on this. And she checks in with me about it. And she holds me accountable to that. So to find that person to help you with your boundaries. And once you've got those two things set up, it's great. Your calendar looks great. People know what you're doing. Hooray. Now you have to go do it. Where we step into the action. Okay. And so the action starts with, we spoke about the get shit done time. So setting that up consistently every week. And in that get shit done time is to take a look at what you've got, what you'd originally planned, what is still actually viable. Because some of us just go into autopilot.
Yes.
I do this on this day at this time. I do this on this day at this time. I do this on this day at this time. Is it still relevant is the question. Should you still be doing it? Is it serving you? Is there something you could be doing differently? If you've been doing it on this day at this time, are you not more efficient? And if you have to do something over and over again, is there not a way to automate certain things, or to systemize them, or to create a process, or to outsource them so that you can start to free up more time for yourself? And then I've spoken about time blocking, and it doesn't have to be a big 2-3 hour chunk, but making sure you are protecting those blocks of time that you need to do certain actions. Let people know what you're working on in those times. If you're like myself and you work for yourself at home, I block out my time so that when clients want to jump into my diary, they can see the only times that they can get into my schedule. That's it. Mm-hmm. So even if I'm working on, today I'm honored to be here. There's a big block of time out of there. But while I was preparing for this, there were blocks of time to prepare so that I knew I had enough time to get the work done. We spoke about filling your cup first. It's that airplane, put your own mask on before you help somebody else. Because if you are drowning, if you are so stressed, if you are to the point that I was, anybody who came into my office, I'm sure in the week or months leading up to that moment, I don't think I gave great leadership advice. I don't think I was a good counsel. I was probably just like, I don't care, go do whatever. Or just give it to me, I'll do more myself, kind of thing.
Right, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And this goes into your stress management, your stress hormones management. If you can find your releases, if you can set yourself up, then when you have the harder times, it's not that hard. if you're coming in, and it doesn't mean you have to get up at 6 a.m. or 5 a.m. and go to the gym and do all this stuff, but if you're figuring out how to arrive with your cup already full, you can handle the knocks more easily. You are more fluid in the way you behave. You can take better action. You think more clearly. You can just be more decisive in all of it because you are thinking clearly instead of from a place of stress, exhaustion, rage, resentment, or just pure sadness. So
depression. Depression.
Yeah, you're coming in as more of a whole person. And I don't think any of us are fully whole. That's part of our journey. But the sort of closer to that state you can be, the better it is.
Yes.
And then looking at just being realistic and being flexible. We are all human. We all have priorities. Our teams have priorities. Our colleagues, our spouse, everybody's got priorities. So let's be realistic. Like, yes, these are mine. This is my priority. This is what I want to protect. But I also know that something may come up. So we need to look at it. I mean, I could be here if I'd had a phone call, if you got a certain phone call you were waiting for, sometimes you might need to take it, depending on what it's for. And so just being realistic, but not being soft, maintaining your boundaries, keeping an eye on the priorities, but knowing that life does happen from time to time. So those are the biggest points there. And one of the things I do want to chat about in our time, and I'm conscious of time, so I won't spend too long, but
yes.
We've got fear and procrastination. So when it comes to taking action, the biggest thing that I see come out when people they've got their priorities, they've got it beautifully planned, they've got the boundaries, they even do the GSD time, but they stop taking action. And that reason is going to come in because it's fear. What if I stop saying yes? If I don't take this on, how are people going to say? If I stop being busy, am I going to look like I'm unproductive? If I say no to the CEO, what's going to happen? Am I going to lose my job? If I'm here all the time, like, oh, my kid's going to not like me, or am I going to be bored, or am I, other fear, am I going to hang out with my own children? Then what am I going to do? How am I going to entertain them? And so there's all of these fears that go on, but I really use an 8-step fear methodology to get over your fear. And it's pretty simple. It is, firstly, acknowledge your fear. Be willing to say, yes, I am scared now. I sat with my coach the other day around a couple of things and working on some stuff. And eventually it was just like, okay, this is not what it is. What it is I'm actually afraid of this happening.
Right.
So it's not that like, oh, I'm too busy to do. I'm too busy for GSD. I'm too busy for this. Acknowledge that you are scared of what might happen if you do it. It's something new. It's something different. And then knowing that when it comes to fear, there's been quite a lot of research done where only about 20% of what we actually fear is real. Like the chances of, I am arachnophobic, I always have been, but the chances of a giant spider coming in and like biting my head off right now, it's minimal. I'm not saying it's impossible, but it's minimal. And so step 1, I am scared. Step 2, is this just fear? Okay. Because the chances of this happening, I don't know what the chances are. I don't know what the chances are because nobody would know till it happens. So to start to that, and then to challenge the fear and to say, like, I know that the feelings of fear are the same, whether I'm just having the fear or I'm experiencing the actual fear or I'm having the emotion around the fear. The feelings, the adrenaline, all of that, the chemical responses that are going on in my body are the same. So it is not that I am not afraid. I am afraid. I am afraid because I don't know if this is going to happen. And I know I feel afraid, and that's okay. But then I know a lot of us know what a postmortem is. I don't know if you know what a premortem is, but to go, okay, so what am I afraid of? And a premortem is to flip it. Instead of being like, oh, all of this happened, here's how we know. It's to say, okay, if I failed, why would I have failed? Because this, because this, because this. Okay, if I think these 3 things could cause failure, how do I sidestep them? How do I beef myself up that I can stand up against them? And that's the premortem. So to acknowledge this fear And then to go, okay, but why? What are the bad parts? Okay, how do we solve for those just in case? Knowing that, going back to 80-20, pretty much they're not going to happen. So but let's give you the tools instead ahead of schedule. And once you've got that, you can then make the decision. Do I feel more comfortable in the state of fear and lacking in action? Or maybe it's not fear. Maybe it's this complete state of distress. I feel safer not seeing my child and going to work every day and crying on my drive home every night. Or am I ready to shift? And when you are ready to shift, that's when you take the power. That's when you take the power from the fear and you say, thank you, fear. I'm going to do it anyway. Thanks very much. I'm going to do this. And I'm going to take control. I'm going to take control of my life. I'm going to take control of the no's. I'm going to tell the CEO, I'm terribly sorry. You need to wait for 2 weeks like everybody else on the output of things. I'm going to risk losing my team because, you know what, I'm a great leader, but I'm going to have to, as I used to say back in the day, like, if I can't change my people, I've got to change my people. And so you then overcome, the fear doesn't disappear, but you overcome the emotions attached to that fear and you take its power. And when you've done that, celebrate. Because through celebration, you are then able to create positive feelings around all of the stuff that's happened, all of this negative. So celebrate it, be proud of yourself. And then the final step is to use the momentum. Cool, did that, what's next? And it's the same thing for getting the right shit done. I'm going to take these things off my plate because they're not a priority. And at the end of that first week, when you've been like, oh, what if I don't do? What if I don't do? What if I don't? At the end of that first week, and you look back and you're like, boom, I had a great week. I did everything I wanted to. And guess what? Chances are you did everything you needed to as well.
All right.
That's where that is. And so that's the momentum that we have around the fear. And so that's all it is for me. And I just want everybody to know that change, I've got to share, change does not happen overnight. And anybody who tells you it can, there are no one-hit wonders. Sort of, it does take time, it takes practice, it takes work, it takes bravery and courage to master the art of getting the right shit done. So just, yeah, my hope is that everybody here is kind to themselves. And if anybody wants to continue a conversation with me, my details at the bottom, and you can definitely get in touch. I'd be more than happy to talk to anybody.
So wonderful, Lindsay.
Thanks, Elle.
Let's see. I'm going to go ahead and put our view back to together so we can see each other.
There you go.
Couple things came up for me. The first was that my parents didn't spend much time away from us, but they would go to bank conventions. My dad was a banker. And so our babysitter, when they would go to these things, was our neighbor, and her name was Janet, one of the most lovely people in the world. And she became a nanny as her profession. She was married with her own children and nanny for a couple in, we both moved to Michigan. It was crazy, from New Hampshire. So she was a nanny. And one thing she shared with me is how the children, their facial features ended up looking like her. Because they imitated her smile, they imitated how she talked, and she had a New Hampshire accent, right? So there's like flavor in there. It was just incredible. And that's something that people need to know. Like, if whoever is caring for your children the most number of hours in the day, they will be taking on those attributes of them. They're learning from them. And so hopefully pick a really great person to be with your child if it's not you, you know. And then you were talking about, you were in sales, and I have a client right now in sales who his boss wanted to have a talk with him because of something to do with his call times. And since he's been taking my course and learning, he's been having much more connection on his calls and making more sales. So that he was just the boss, whomever, was just looking at the times. And he goes, well, have you taken a look to see about my sales? Because he's like the #1 sales guy now. And it's because he's doing his calls completely differently than he did in the past. He's not hurried anymore. He's never in a hurry for anything he needs to do because he's got control of his stress hormones. So the huge change that can start to happen, but then how you have to communicate to others. Like you were sharing, what is it that needs to happen now that this is how you're being? Because your being changes when you go through coaching, like with you, with me, your being changes.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's really important to be straight up and say, this is how I'm doing things now.
Yep. And that's the boundaries. That's the boundaries. I was chatting with a corporate client of mine in Canada yesterday, and we were discussing the fact that some of their managers, or their leaders, not their managers, but their leaders are getting frustrated with the team because it's like, so and so is just not making it. They're just not getting to the work. And the question I asked was, but why aren't they? The first response was they are unproductive or they don't know how to do their job. And so my question was, but why aren't they?
Mm-hmm.
Are you clear on your communication? How are you measuring them? How much work are you putting on the plate? What else is also on their plate? And suddenly that was a bit of a, oh, because the go-to response was, you're useless at your job.
Right. Yeah.
Instead of the bigger picture. And so at that deeper conversation, and whether it comes from you talking about these are my boundaries, this is how I'm being now,
Mm-hmm.
or it's from a leadership perspective, should be the what is going on piece.
Yeah. 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 I'm going to definitely place interview next to someone else's who brought up that very question. And that's a part of this leadership series is I'm very intentionally placing these different speakers so that it almost feels like a continued conversation as we're going through. So this has been so great, Lindsay. By the way, we'll have links down below for you to connect to Lindsay. She's got a wonderful PDF for you, so please go ahead and grab that. And I'm just really, really grateful you came on with me. This was super powerful. I know it will be really, really helpful. And I love how up front you said language and whatever, because I've been triggered by language before. So I actually have to use some tools around language. So
well, thank you for your
very good.
Appreciate it.
It was great. Thanks, Lindsay. And any parting thoughts before we close out today?
I just think I'm going to go back to the same one that I closed out with, Elle, and that is just be kind to yourselves. We're all on a journey.
Yeah.
Each and every one of us is learning, growing, whether you have been a leader for years or you are stepping into this role, which is maybe why you're trying to be part of this leadership series to get to know a little bit more about what it takes. Any of it, every single skill, behavior, being that we do takes time. So enjoy your journey and just be kind.
Be kind. I love it. Thank you so much. And stay tuned. Tomorrow we'll have another great speaker for you. Have a great pressure-free day. Oops.